Welcome. It's so good to be with you on this Wednesday as we get together for a little midweek Bible study and devotional time. And I'm so glad that you've taken some time out to join us to do just that. And hopefully by joining us, you'll be uplifted and enlightened and hopefully get a little bit of insight in how God desires for us to live and hopefully some encouragement along the way as well. And again, I'm so glad that you've taken some time out to join us to hopefully do that today. I want to love like Jesus. And I'm guessing you do too, and that's not a revolutionary idea, right? I mean, it should be kind of obvious. We want to love like Jesus, but I also have a problem, and I'm guessing that you experience this at times as well. I don't want to put this on you, but I'm guessing we all fit in the same boat from time to time, because far too often I want to love like Jesus, and yet far too often I live with no shortage of self-interest or selfish ambition. Far too often I'm impatient and insecure. Far too often I can be judgmental and insensitive and petty and resentful, and the list goes on and on and on. But I truly do want to love like Jesus. Why? Well, because I know it is the best way to live. When we love like Jesus, we're lifted outside of ourselves and we begin to shed self-interest with our spouse, with our kids, with our friends, with everyone. His brand of love sees beyond the normal range of what we can see as humans in our human vision, and over those walls of resentment and barriers of betrayal or something that's been done to us. When we love like Jesus, we rise above our petty demands and our snobbish entitlements. We lose our tight-fisted anxiety and relax in the surplus of benevolence and generosity that he desires for us to live, and so many other things that we experience when we love like Jesus. And the Jesus model of love truly inspires us in following the best way to live. I love how Paul describes it in 1 Corinthians 12 as the most excellent way. It truly is the most excellent way. And I want to love like that. But then the question becomes, can anyone really love like that? Can anyone really love like Jesus? After all, he raised the bar of love to extraordinary heights. I mean, love your enemies, walk the extra mile, turn the other cheek. I mean, we have a hard time loving our friends and family sometimes, much less our enemy. We have a hard time going 1 mile, much less the extra mile. We have a hard time turning one cheek, much less the other when we've done wrong. This love seems to be beyond reason, isn't it? Of course it is. And that's the point, right? To love like Jesus, we need to think and to feel. We need to reason and have the emotional side of it. We have to have both head and heart working together, and ultimately God bringing them together through the gift of his grace and his love in our lives. That is the only way to bring perfect love into our imperfect lives. And here's the truth. When you open your heart, love changes your mind. Just let that sink in for a moment. Your mind can do an about face and be transformed when it receives a divine impulse from your heart. You'll experience a revolution in your thinking when you allow your heart to enter the conversation. If you're seeking a reasonable love, a love that makes sense, a love that is purely reciprocal, and we do this and so we get this. If you think of love just in terms of what is reasonable, then you will miss out on a love that is extraordinary, a love that is not cautious but extravagant. You'll miss out on the power to find a love that you didn't even know you had, because you really didn't, but it exists through God's love for you and in you and through you. Because here's the deal. Loving like Jesus is far more obtainable than we might imagine. It's not in and of ourselves, it's through God, but it's far more attainable than we might imagine. And his teaching and his example reveal at least five distinct and practical qualities of loving like Jesus. If we want to love like him, I think we've got to, 1, become more mindful and less detached. 2, become more approachable and less exclusive. 3, become more graceful and less judgmental. 4, become more bold and less fearful. And 5, become more self-giving and less self-absorbed. Now, there's a whole lot of conversations that can be had on those things and the nuances of those things, but I think those things are at the heart of what God desires for us to be. Be more of this and less of these things. Now, is this an exhaustive list of how Jesus loved? Of course not. But it is a way to get an earthly handle on this heavenly ideal of love. Time and again, Jesus demonstrated these 5 qualities and spoke about them, not as unreachable ideals, but as doable, practical, implementable things in our lives. They have to be. Just listen to the words of Paul in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. He says, follow God's example. That's one thing to hang on to. Therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Paul says, 1, follow God's example, and 2, walk in the way of Christ's love. In other words, love this way. Love like that. And Paul wouldn't tell us to do that if this love was elusive, if this was some pie in the sky, out of reach, unattainable, and untouchable kind of love. No, it is real, and it's doable and livable, and Jesus gives us practical steps to love in this extraordinary way. He calls us to embody these 5 qualities. Are they difficult? Absolutely, but not insurmountable. Will you and I live them out perfectly and never fail at them? Absolutely not. But don't be discouraged, for it's in our failed attempts that we learn to better travel the most excellent way and to love like that, like Jesus. Hope you have a blessed day. God bless.